This is the Washington Times front page for Wednesday, November 27th, 2024. Thanks for joining us. I'm George Gerbo. Israel and Iran-backed Hezbollah forces have agreed to a ceasefire of fighting along the Lebanon border in a deal brokered by the U.S. and France. Mike Glenn and Mallory Wilson report President Biden said all fighting between the two sides was to cease early Wednesday under the terms of the deal. He spoke just hours after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu endorsed the agreement in a nationally televised address. Over the next 60 days, Israel will start to withdraw its troops from the region as Lebanon's army moves in to assume control. The deal does not affect the fight in the Gaza Strip with Palestinian Hamas militants. Months of U.S. efforts to negotiate a ceasefire with the release of dozens of hostages held by Hamas have failed to achieve a breakthrough. A congressional commission is urging the federal government to establish a Manhattan Project-like program to develop advanced AI capabilities to compete with China. Ryan Lovelace reports the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission's annual report made pursuing artificial general intelligence its top recommendation. As a model, it returned to the secret World War II-era project to develop the first nuclear bomb. The government and private sector are straining to develop and perfect AI applications, just as China is doing. The panel recommended that Congress extend broad multi-year contracting authority to the executive branch for AI, cloud computing, and data center companies to compete for dominance. Ballots in the presidential race are still being tallied as what analysts call a decisive but not overwhelming victory for Donald Trump and Republicans gets finalized. Stephen Dinan reports Trump has roughly 77 million votes tallied nationwide, with nearly 74.5 million for Vice President Kamala Harris. That works out to 49.9% for Trump and 48.3% for Harris. The remaining votes were cast for minor party candidates and independents. Harris will likely close that gap a little more, given that most of the remaining ballots are on the Democratic-leaning West Coast. Trump's 312 to 226 win in the Electoral College should remain unchanged, though, barring a faithless elector or two. Incoming Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee Chairman Rand Paul says senators will vote on the first day of the new Congress on his bill to block migrants from seeking asylum if they enter the U.S. illegally. Susan Ferricchio reports the Kentucky Republican also plans to use his committee to advance legislation to end government funding of illegal immigrant travel within the country. He additionally intends to end the government's involvement in censorship of technology companies, telling fellow senators that he sought the committee's chair to reassert Congress's oversight role. And finally, though he made a name for himself in his native Michigan and became an icon in Southern California, Earvin Magic Johnson has been repeatedly drawn to the nation's capital in his post-basketball life. Now, as part owner of the NFL's Washington Commanders and the NWSL's Washington Spirit, Liam Griffin reports the 65-year-old is in the area almost weekly. A Super Bowl still tops his wish list, but his other DC team could bring him a championship first. Johnson invested in the Spirit this fall, just weeks before it made a playoff run, before falling in the NWSL title game last week. Find all of today's front page stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page or the Washington Times app, and find us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us on social media at Wash Times for breaking news, sports, commentary, and more. For the Washington Times, I'm George Gerbo.
Imagine relying on a dozen different software programs to run your business, none of which are connected, and each one more expensive and more complicated than the last. It can be pretty stressful. Now, imagine Odoo. Odoo has all the programs you'll ever need, and they're all connected on one platform. Doesn't Odoo sound amazing? Let Odoo harmonize your business with simple, efficient software that can handle everything for a fraction of the price. Sign up today at odoo.com. That's ODOO.com.